Okay, Parliament. If you've ever vaguely looked at British politics, then you've probably realised Parliament is quite important. There's even a BBC channel just dedicated to Parliament called BBC Parliament. Well, technically it's actually dedicated to several different parliaments, but that's another more complicated thing. But how Parliament actually works is often a bit more obscure, so that's what we'll explain today.
In the debate, there's no need for the honourable member for Dewsbury to chunt a ahoy there from a sedentary position. Very eccentric behaviour.
Okay, so Parliament is the legislative branch of the UK government, like Congress in the United States or the Bundestag in Germany. It's made up of two houses, referred to as being bicameral, which are the House of Commons and the House of Lords. However, unlike the US Congress, the House of Commons is actually more powerful than the House of Lords, who were forced to limit their own power in 1910. Right, okay, if I don't stop myself about 1910 and what happened there, I will get very distracted and I could do a whole video on that. So, before I start rambling, let's get into it.
He is one of the causes of the deficit. I think we've just found the first ever example of political masso-sadism.
The House of Commons is made up of 650 members of Parliament, or MPs, who are elected to represent single-member constituencies. They are elected using the first-past-the-post electoral system, which means that each constituency, people vote for a single candidate, with the candidate who gets the most votes winning. Then, once all the MPs are elected, the party with the most MPs forms government. This system has been criticised for the fact that it creates a two-party system. This can be seen by the fact that, over the last 100 years, the only parties to actually form governments, well, majority governments, there have been supporting parties, have been the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. There is also not separate elections for the government and the House of Commons, meaning the Prime Minister is also just an MP. However, the Prime Minister can be a member of the House of Lords, but this is very rare and hasn't happened since 1963. And the only Prime Minister to actually run the country from the Lords has been the Earl of Salisbury, who ruled in the Victorian era. So it's quite unprecedented to have a Prime Minister in the Lords. The House of Commons is also the most powerful of the two houses, with most legislation starting in the Commons, and also having the ability to force the House of Lords to pass legislation. There's been a lot of criticism over how narrow a part of society MPs are usually drawn from, with massive overrepresentation of people from Oxbridge, meaning the universities of Oxford and Cambridge, and the privately educated, with even the supposedly anti-establishment, although I'm not sure how he is anti-establishment, Nigel Farage, going to Dulwich College, one of the UK's most expensive private schools.
Gradually they faded away, and then the survivors of World War II started to look pretty old as well, as my noble friend, the Baroness, reminded me, I believe, claiming to be one of the only survivor, I think.
The House of Lords is the upper house of Parliament, being made up of roughly 830 lords at the most recent numbers I could find. That number can itself be broken down into roughly 676 life peers, 92 hereditary peers, and 26 lords spiritual. The first of these groups, the life peers, are lords appointed by the government to serve in the House of Lords with their peerage ending when they die and not passing to their children. First being awarded with the passage of the Life Peerage Act in 1958, the aim was making the lords more diverse and preventing the growth and dilution of the nobility, because the Conservative Party actually still cared about that at that point. The hereditary peers are slightly different. They inherit their titles and their seats in the Lords from their parents, with there being currently 92 in the House, although this was actually down from 750 due to a reform by Tony Blair's government, which carried out a manifesto pledge to remove them from the House of Lords, but the Lords actually threatened to cause divisions on every single amendment of every bill they reached, which would have essentially meant they were unable to do anything. So they came up with a thing called the Weatherall Amendment, allowing 92 of them to remain, roughly 1 in 10. There are also 25 Lords Spiritual, who are made up of select bishops and archbishops of the Church of England. And you might notice that's a different number from what I said earlier, and that's because there are actually 26 positions for Lord Spiritual, but one of those is the Archbishop of Canterbury. And following an abuse scandal in the church last year, Justin Welby, the former Archbishop, resigned, and there is currently nobody in that position. So there are currently only 25 sitting. There's also been a lot of criticism in recent years of how unrepresentative the Lords still is, especially with the concept of resignation honours lists, where Prime Ministers, when they leave office, are able to appoint an essentially unlimited number of people to the House. This actually became a pretty big scandal a few times, notably with the resignation honours of Liz Truss and Howard Wilson, and Boris Johnson, infamous for his scandals, actually trying to get his hairdresser on his resignation honours list. He is also responsible for the ennoblement of Yevgeny Lebedev, the owner of the Evening Standard newspaper and a Russian oligarch. So that is a pretty big problem with the House of Lords.
Taxpayers were helping to pay for at Oxford. I didn't receive a proper answer then. Maybe Dodgy Dave will answer it now.
Now, any Constitution nerds watching this video, firstly, why are you watching a simplified video on this? Will actually be saying that there is in fact a third part of Parliament, and that is actually true. And it's the royal assent, which means the monarch has to sign all bills into law. And this is actually capable of blocking bills, in theory. However, this hasn't actually happened since the Scottish Militias Act of 1708, and Parliament actually asked Queen Anne to block that specific bill because of the threat of invasion from France. So it's purely ceremonial nowadays, in all but name. Although there have been some instances where the royal family have asked Parliament to amend bills, such as employment legislation, to exclude them. And from what I've just said, you may have realised that Parliament seems pretty fundamentally broken on a lot of levels. Because it is. It's not perfect, it's a far from perfect system, but it does have good points. One example of that is that it is actually very good at legislating. It passes bills quite effectively, and still scrutinises them very effectively in the Lords. So usually the laws that come out of Parliament are pretty good. It's also got a mechanism for private members' bills to pass, which is near impossible in the United States. This is actually how the ban on upskirting was implemented in this country, and it was first made illegal was through a private members' bill. There is also a private members' bill going through the House at the moment on assisted dying. So big social reforms in this country have historically been carried out through private members' bills in Parliament, which means that they were introduced by individual members. So Parliament may not be perfect, but it's pretty damn good. And there's definitely worse ones out there. Okay, that's everything from me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. Hopefully I will see you again soon. Goodbye.